Hello, welcome to Better Together, the Transformation Club. I'm Elizabeth Browning.
And I'm Meredith Vinci. And we have a very special guest today because Elizabeth and I have been talking about this topic for a while, and we thought that most of you could probably relate to it these days, especially all my teacher friends. If you're out there, you probably really want to listen to this. But we were talking about how you can be more resilient in coping with a lot of difficulties and challenges in your life. And obviously, the pandemic is a very big topic for a lot of people and all of the new lifestyle changes we have. So we thought that we'd bring a special guest in today to talk to us a little bit about that and hopefully give us some strategies to think about. So Elizabeth?
So welcome to my friend. She's actually a member of our community, Lois Barth. She is a human development expert, a professional speaker, a coach, the author of the Courage to Sparkle, the Audacious Girl's Guide to Creating a Life That Lights You Up. And I was going to have a copy of my book here that I could hold up, but alas, it's buried with some other things I'm trying to clean up as I become more resilient. Let me tell you a little bit about Lois first, and then we're going to let her talk. Lois was the life coach for two of the longest running and prestigious makeover programs in women's magazines, Fitness and Self magazine, which today over 1.6 million people have participated in. She's also been featured in and has been a source expert for All You, Women's Day, Weight Watchers magazine, others. Her essays and articles have been published in the New York Times, Self magazine, Massage magazine, and others. And she has a YouTube series called Smart Sexy TV, What Nobody Talks About But Everyone Needs to Hear. So welcome, Lois. Thank you so much for taking this Saturday morning with us. And the topic today is radical resiliency. So what does radical resiliency mean to you?
That's a great question, Elizabeth. As you know, I love words. Nice to meet you, Mary Beth. I'm really excited about being on the program today. I love words. Words are like tasty little morsels with no calories that nourish us very deeply. And words are so powerful because they can either elevate us or undermine us. So for me, resiliency is like kind of one of those buzzwords that have been thrown around a lot, like pivot, pivot, pivot. It's like the new frog going ribbit, ribbit. Now it's like pivot, pivot. And I feel that resiliency can be like that. And that's why I like to make a distinction between garden variety resiliency, or the old paradigm of resiliency, and radical resiliency. So, when you think of resiliency, people think about, oh, I got to bounce back. I got to get through this. And I think that's kind of that's the 1.0 version. But radical resiliency is, rather than moving from, is really going from, let me bounce back, to how do I bound forward? How do I take the exact circumstances that are taking me out and actually use them to catapult me to the next level, personally, professionally, interpersonally? And that's, to me, what radical resiliency is. Because as difficult as the times that we're in, and we're all in very difficult, challenging times, when we look back in history, it is the time of the greatest darkness and struggle that some of the greatest innovations of our time. And why is that? Because of our innate ability to be ding, 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 resilient, and radically resilient. So that is my definition of radical resiliency.
So that's fantastic. And I'm very intrigued by that, especially given our circumstances during the pandemic. So can you elaborate a little bit more in terms of why you think radical resiliency at this time, specifically during the pandemic, is so important to all of us to actually work on?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The model that I bring to it is the 4 C's, or previously known as the 5 C's of radical resiliency. I think it's such an important time because the biggest thing that has come up for the pandemic to me is the illusion of certainty has been stripped from us. And I want to say the illusion because we've never had certainty. We've never had control, but we've had some consistency, we've had some familiarity, and so we can sort of rest our laurels on that. But this has really stripped us of the illusion of control and the illusion of certainty. And what it's done is it's confronted us on a very core level around survival, around are we going to be okay? And so it's a time to really reevaluate that and to say, well, what is okayness? You know, what is good enough? And what is really bounding forward? And not make us wrong for any one of those categories, but to able to really say, wow, I have been stripped of the illusion of control and certainty. And how can I actually use that to not only go through the pandemic, but to grow through it? And I already see, you know, we've all seen, you know, what I call accidental silver linings, or excuse my French, crappy silver linings, but there have been a lot of amazing things that have emerged amidst the seismic challenges.
So the 4 C's, would you walk us through those? Like, what are the 4 C's, and do you have, I don't know, 2 that are particularly your favorites? Can you talk to us about that?
I do. I love all of my 4 C's, but there's, well, the first one is really my favorite, but I don't try to say it too loud because the other C's get a little jealous, you know. Our creative children can be so temperamental, it feels so triggered. But the first C is curiosity. And I feel like curiosity does to the mind what yoga, when we go to it, does to our body. It makes us agile and open and solution focused. And that's what curiosity. Now, if you'll notice, I remember W.C. Fields had said that he would never act with children or animals. And a little fun fact that won't get you $5 on Jeopardy, but one of the reasons why were they were absolutely captivating. And no matter how good of an actor you are, you will be upstaged by a child. And what do they both have in common? Curiosity, wonder, joy. They are always in that moment of wonder and curiosity, and that's what's so compelling. And I think it's the same for us. So how does that translate? So for me, curiosity basically both saved and changed my life. I write about this in a lot of my book, Courage to Sparkle. I had a horrific eating disorder. I went from 128 pounds feeling fat, to 98 pounds to 180 pounds in less than 2 years. Nobody recognized me, and worst of all, I didn't recognize myself. And it was a harrowing time, and I really had what I call a spiritual awakening, where curiosity was really my mag light, if you will, that led the way for me to really shift. And basically, long story short, I was opening the door to my apartment. I was actually closing it, and my inner critic, we all have one, right? I actually named mine. Slash was particularly loud that day. You know, our inner critics know exactly what to say. They don't push our buttons, they install them. And that day, particularly, she was very loud, and she was like, "Can't believe you ate all those donuts. 10 donuts at once. You'll never lose the weight." You know, nothing that I hadn't heard before. But that day, the voice of curiosity emerged in a beautiful, poignant, and very persistent way. And basically that voice said, what if you could never lose or gain another pound again in your life? How would you live your life? And at that moment, curiosity was like a lifeboat to prevent me from drowning in a sea of self-loathing. And I was drowning in a sea of self-loathing. And I kept saying, what if? And I went back into my apartment, took out a piece of paper, you remember paper, and I started writing all the things I was going to plan to do once I was thin. And at that moment, curiosity taught me my weight is not my problem. Fear, negativity, self-doubt, waiting to be perfect is. And I literally went, what would start to happen if I went down that list? And I did exactly that. I went through all of them, and some were terrifying. Others were like, you kidding me? I put my life on hold for this. And miracles happened. My body got a lot smaller, 30 pounds smaller, and my life got a lot bigger. And so I really feel how that speaks to us during COVID is to really look at what is your inner critic telling you that's not possible. What is your inner critic gloom and doom thinking telling you that this will never end, or just ride it out, or you'll never get that job, or forget about dating during COVID, and getting really curious and asking yourself, is this really true? Or more importantly, does it serve me? Is it productive for me to believe this? And what would happen if I push that envelope and take that small action anyway and get curious of the old beliefs and start to move forward? And I've seen miracles happen with my clients and the people I speak to. And that's why I feel like curiosity opens the gateway for those miracles for us to happen. It's not a sexy see like commitment, or, you know, it's subtle, but it's often the subtle ones that create the most powerful shifts in our life, because we open our minds, we open our hearts and go, what if? What can be possible? And to me, that's the essence, to look at whatever's happening in our life. What's the lesson? What's the opportunity on the other side of the fear? And how can I get curious? And of course, what's one small step I can take in that direction? So that's why I love curiosity. I could be president of the Curiosity Club.
So a couple of questions we might ask during COVID, like,
Sure.
what if, and because I'm really fascinated by this, and then I want to hear about the other three C's, but
Of course.
like, what if Zoom really wasn't as terrible as everybody feels that we're stuck in Zoom, but what if it actually was a gateway to meeting people and making connections that you never made? And, you know, like a couple of other, Mary Beth, you have any curiosity? What if? I'm just curious.
What if, yeah.
What are some curious questions that we could ask specifically as a community right now? Because I don't know, it took us 15 minutes to try to get on Facebook Live, and then we had to ditch it and just record. What if that's not the end of the world, that actually there's a reason that this happened? So I don't know, just play with that for a second. And then I want to hear about the other three C's. Lois?
Oh, I'll jump in about that. Yeah, well, one of the accidental silver linings, or crappy silver linings, is that because we have so many technological breakdowns and we're all struggling with it, is we've left our peacocking and our posturing behind. Like, I've never seen more Zoom calls with CEOs and CHOs that have the hair pulled back, the hoodie, the nice hoodie. It's not like wearing flip-flops to work. There's a large continuum there. There's a vulnerability and an accessibility through our breakdowns that we would never have access. Everybody would be buttoned up and polished. And I think that's a humility about, wow, you know, we feel like we control our environment. We don't. And I also think we were laughing a lot about it. You know, we were laughing. Here we're talking about resiliency and we get to face it. You know, one of my Loisisms is life is talking, make sure you're listening. And like, what is the lesson? Maybe it's about humanity and not having to be perfect and not having to posture we have it all together. And also being curious about the inside of a lot of people's homes, their ceiling fans. Some people record really funky. You see their, or they're chewing. I love the chewer, the smackers. And so having a sense of humor about, I mean, I don't know about you, but one of my favorite parts about watching films is watching the outtake reels.
Yeah.
And the bloopers. And I think we're all living in a giant blooper time where we're actually seeing it live. So anyway, those are some of the things I have.
I think that's very interesting. One thing that I was just thinking about while you were speaking is from a teacher standpoint, because this sort of has been happening the last like 2 weeks, is that it's been very challenging and, you know, connections are breaking and, you know, the teachers have to be live in the moment in real time with students at all times and trying to troubleshoot all of the issues. And one thing that I did sort of in reflection of all the bad stuff, because I can go on and spend 20 minutes here complaining how horrible it is. But, you know, it's funny that, you know, and I love that you just kind of were kind of helping us with this, because I'm almost thinking, I'm thinking about the students who normally in a classroom would probably be the clowns that would be joking around, that would be giving me a harder amount of time, that I'm realizing, because I have some of the same students that I had when they were younger.
Mm.
And I'm noticing a big difference of them just being almost grateful that they are seeing someone on Zoom. So what if, all this technology difficulties, but I think the effect of the pandemic, instead of just thinking, oh my God, this is all awful and we're never going to be able to hug or do anything again, the fact that we are back together again, I think we're starting to maybe change our human connections in a lot of ways. It's sort of, I guess, the thing that was kind of going through my mind with that, which, like, as you were saying, even with the CEO, realizing that we're real people and that we're all suddenly realizing that we have a lot more in common than we probably thought we did, which is kind of a beautiful thing.
It's actually.
I think you're right. I really think you're right, Mary Beth, because we get so grounded in like, oh, the things we want to do moving forward, but we forget about the day-to-day things. Like my friend's daughter went to school and she was so grateful. She was like, oh my God, I get to go to school, and whereas before you have to drag them out of bed. And
That's right.
a really interesting point, which is there's an intergenerational opportunity. A lot of these kids probably know way more about technology than we do. So there might be somebody on the line that can be a resource who's like 8 years old in the single digits, So I think there's also the whole intergenerational, and also children have issues around authority. We all have issues, and to see our authority figures be human and fallible, I think that creates a connection. So I think there's a wealth. One of my Loisisms is great gift, lousy wrapping. And I feel like there's been a lot of great gifts, lousy wrapping during COVID around our humanity.
Yeah.
And not sweating the small stuff. So,
yeah.
So not to let your other 3 C's feel too left out, because the kids are
Okay.
jealous. What are the other 3?
That's right. So the second one is compassion. And I really feel like compassion goes very aligned with curiosity. So when we can be compassionate with ourselves and others, and basically all I feel that compassion is treating ourselves and others with greater kindness, generosity, and patience, is when we're feeling really stressed out with ourselves, in this moment to stop and breathe. How can I be kinder to myself? How can I be kinder to another human being? How can I be more generous? How can I be more patient? And I find, we again have a lot of buzzwords in our culture, in our work culture, but not necessarily a lot of gravitas behind it. We hear the words authenticity, transparency, safe work cultures, diversity is a huge conversation, but compassion to me is the gateway. Not to get off on other topics, but people are still finding their way around the diversity issue. So what if someone messes up and uses the wrong language? Instead of slamming them, to say, hey, I just want to correct you that, this is a better way to frame it that will put you in a better light. Like just knowing that we're all doing the best we can. And I really believe it's true. And how do we extend more generosity, kindness, and patience? And I just see little examples of, I'll do it in a very simple way. Back in New York City, someone was having a hard time getting off a curb, and I just stopped and said, hey, you look like you're struggling. Can I help you here? And they were like blown away. I felt like they thought they were like a star in a reality TV show.
Mm-hmm.
They said, thank you. I didn't even feel like people noticed me. Thank you. So we do that for ourselves. And
yeah.
then,
I'm sorry. I'm just also,
please jump in.
I just want to piggyback again, because I feel like we know as a society that we're capable of doing that. If you look at, some of the most devastating things that we've been through as a society after 9/11 and all these, that we're capable of a lot of compassion, but it's very difficult. And I guess my question to you is, I don't know if there's any way of troubleshooting it. The question, it's very difficult to continuously be mindful of it. Like, I am the kind of person that tries to do well for others, but I sometimes have the hardest time being compassionate with myself, which is interesting that you said that, you know. So how do you find, especially when you're so stressed out and you think, why can't I get through this? And why is this happening to me? Whatever. And I think a lot of people might feel that way. I mean, is there anything that you potentially could say about more of the compassion for yourself? Because I think that that might be even almost a harder challenge than working in your community to help out.
Bing, bing, bing. I actually have an exercise that I do with my clients and the groups I speak to. And basically, and especially across the board, but especially for women. I've had so many women say, if I treated my clients and my friends the way I treat myself or the way I speak to myself, I would have no clients or friends. And they mean it. And they're very successful and people of all levels. So one of the exercise, and it is something that you have to cultivate. It's not something that you either have or you don't. Or one of the exercises I have, and I actually think I might even put this on audio because I think it would be helpful as a guided meditation, is one of the things I suggest is for people to close their eyes and to think of somebody recently who you have either mentored, who you have given them a piece of advice, you have been compassionate with them, and feel what that feels in your body. Maybe you've given them the greatest gift, which is rapt attention, buoyed them up, reassured them, and then really be with the energy of that, not necessarily the language or the verbiage, but the energy of how that feels in your body, and then redirect that to yourself in a way for a specific issue that you're struggling with. So let's say you're struggling with some piece that is making you very hard on yourself, to redirect that and guide that towards that part of yourself that's really struggling right now. Does that help a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you.
It's been really interesting. I did that once in a room full of 250 people. And I wish I could have videotaped it, because you saw the shoulders go down and you heard people start to breathe. And even when people shared afterwards, their voices sounded different. The energy in the room changed. I was like, this is what happens in a room full of self-compassion. What kind of miracles could be possible? So.
Wow.
That's great. Thank you so much. I can already
Welcome. Thanks for asking.
How that might help me with some things going on. So
Great.
thank you.
I'm so glad.
So the last,
And so there's a third one.
Oh, yes. I don't want to forget about them. They don't want to be the redheaded stepsisters of this.
You didn't even mention me.
So the third one basically is connection. How do we have connection with ourselves, and how do we have connection with others? And with ourselves, fascinated, we talk about technology. Most of us would never leave our house without making sure our phone is fully charged or we have a backup charger. But do we ever ask ourselves if we're fully charged or what our own battery power? You know, we never say, oh, I'm on 1 bar, let me stop and charge. And when we have more connection, I know, right? Most of us are like, oh, what the hell? I ate 18 hours ago, I'm on 4 hours of sleep, I'll do it, I'll deal with it. Caffeine, sugar, woohoo! Yeah, it doesn't always help. So to really just to stop and ask, where am I, what can I do today to refuel my own battery? Now, we've all been given a litany of, 8 glasses, 8 ounces, don't eat this food, eat that food. And, we all have to figure out what works for us in the refueling. But I believe this also goes above and beyond. What fills your well? Is it a moment of prayer to breathe? Is it listening to music? Is it reminding yourself of the blessings in your life? Is it moving? And just how can I refuel? Because when we refuel ourselves, well, there it is. We already have more resiliency because we're more solution focused. And connection with others is really about, well, let's face it, we're all in sales, whether we like it or not, every single one of them. And we all are we're salespeople, and it's statistically 80% of all sales are emotionally driven by people who they know, like, and trust. That's what it is. So connection is the gateway to create knowing, liking, and trust. Making a connection, looking at people around us. How can we serve them? I recently did a podcast with a woman who I have a very nice relationship with, but it was, oh my God, that might be her now. Sorry about the phone in the background. I apologize that my phone. Can I shut it off, or should we just have it as background music?
You can, it's charging. Obviously, your phone is getting some fuel. It's okay.
There it is. There, da, 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 da. But, I literally, instead of just wishing her happy birthday, I sang on LinkedIn. There's a button you can do a voice message, and I sang her happy birthday, the song that Elizabeth taught me 15 years ago. And she was so mesmerized that she said, will you be a guest on my podcast show? And made a connection. So we can do that more and more. So, and the last piece, of course, is courage, which is moving forward towards our dreams and our goals, or just anything that scares us, but also moves us forward, not in the absence of our fear, but right alongside it. So those are all the 4 C's, and I like them as a whole body of work, but I also think even if you just take one and say, I'm going to really commit to this, things will change.
I love that.
Wow, those are all great.
Oh, thank you.
So,
Yeah, thank you so much. They're great strategies, and hopefully everybody has at least one takeaway, like you're saying, with it, because I think they're all, they all can be life-changing themselves.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And I know that you are offering, rumor has it, you're offering some gifts to the group. So can you share what?
I am.
I love gifts. We all love
Sure. Gifts are wonderful. We all have gifts. We love getting gifts. Yay! So 2 gifts I have is a 30-minute discovery session, complimentary, if there's something that you are particularly working on that you need some support. And if you're also curious about how coaching can really make a difference for you right now in your life, shoot me an email, lois@loisbarth.com. And then the second one, and you can have both, yay, abundance. The second one is I created an 8-minute video of the 5 C's that really kind of go through each one in its entirety. And so it's bite-sized, it's 8 minutes. So you can, again, shoot me an email, lois@loisbarth.com. And you can say which gift, discovery call, and 5C video, and I will do that.
Well, thank you. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I'd like to just end with one of my favorite Loisisms, if I can, which is move from criticism to curiosity. When we are in fear, we are always contracted. And even if we're stressed out, there's something that we're criticizing. It might be a circumstance, our own reaction, what's going on in the world. There's often a criticism under the fear. I have found that. And criticism is a very contractive energy. There's a one-upmanship, one-downmanship, either or, whereas curiosity is a both end. There's room for a lot to be happening simultaneously, and it creates more openness. So I just wanted to end with my little Loisism.
That is brilliant. I cherish your Loisisms. All right. Thank you so much, Lois. And thank you on this.
So my pleasure. Thank you.
Grand adventure of moving into Facebook Live or not. So it was wonderful. All right. Everybody take care.
We appreciate you coming today.
Better together.
Better together.
Yay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye.